What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over just the basics, meaning the first set of core nodes in OpenAI's agent builder. Again, in order to reach this part of the website, you're going to go to platform.openai.com/agent-builder. They don't really tell you that, so that's why I'm explaining it in this video, and let's jump right into it. Cool. So every workflow begins with a start node. This is the beginning, and this is what allows you to add essentially a trigger. Unlike other workflow programs like N8N, where you can trigger from a Gmail, receiving an email or adding a file into a folder. This uses state variables. So you would trigger either using a string, a number, a boolean, an object, which you can add a schema for here, or a list, which is a list of values essentially, right? But for the most part, the most common use case that we will see is going to be input as text, meaning that you're going to type a string, essentially a chat box that goes into this agent, and the agent will receive that as an input, right? So that's essentially it here. The other thing that we have is an end node. An end node is always the last node on your workflow, which tells it to stop running essentially, right? So if you have something that's looping and the agent continues to trigger multiple times, you can waste a lot of credits and computational power. So having an end node is very important to just end any sort of workflow that you're working on. And the output here you can add as a schema. So here you can add properties, which would be changing, like, again, string, number, boolean, enum, object, or an array of data points. So essentially, this is just a way to output whatever the AI agent will return to you as a response and output it in a specific format. So you're able to kind of like manipulate data here. And of course you can go into advanced and type this in JSON, and you can use Claude or GPT to help you write this code as well if you would like to output your data that matches a certain schema or a certain other form of output, right? So next is the note node, which this is kind of like, if you're a programmer, this is just like writing comments essentially. And generally this is just used to explain what's going on in your workflow. This is the starting node triggered by text input, right? So you can resize it if you want, and then you can add it just above this, right? And you can kind of make it neat, and then you can add it above this. Then if you wanted to add another note, you can explain what the agent does. Takes an input and reasons, then gives an output. So again, this doesn't really have anything to do with the workflow itself. This is just a way to organize your nodes so that you can remember what they do, or if you're passing it on to somebody else, you can, just explain it to them so they'll have it written on screen and you don't have to be there walking them through it, right? So now these are all the core nodes. I want to go into the agent node, which is going to be the meat and potatoes of this video. So with the agent node, you can name it. So if I wanted to say Dog Walker Pro, right? You'll see that the name changes here. It doesn't actually affect anything as far as how it's going to function. However, this is the system prompt where you can say you are a professional dog walker assistant, right? Your knowledge is everything about dogs and walking them. So this is where you would prompt your AI agent to understand who it is, what it is, and who it is, right? You can even tell it output responses as single sentences, right? This is where you would write your rules and explain how you want it to function and interpret data. And you can even add context by adding different inputs from the from the workflow that happened in previous nodes. So if we want to add input as text here, it's already given, right? So include the chat history just allows it to, if you're having a back and forth, it allows it to reference the chat's history. This uses memory. So if you don't need it to reference previous conversations, like if you don't need a lot of back and forth, you can disable this to save computation power and memory for the agent and save your API tokens. If you have this on, then users or yourself can have a long list of conversation, let's say 10 dialogues back and forth, and it can reference what's going on in your first dialogue, right? On the 10th dialogue that you have with it, it can reference what's going on in the first or the second or the third. So it really depends on your needs if you want to have this on or off. I recommend if you don't need to use it, do not have it on because it will waste more power and more tokens. The model, you can choose between pretty much all the AI models that GPT has had to offer. You can choose reasoning models, you can choose all of the GPT-4 models, and then the newest and the smartest and the frontier model, GPT-5, right? However, one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that the more advanced the model is, you're going to be wasting a lot more money or API tokens per input and per output. As you can see here, every cached input is a fraction of a penny, and for the output, it becomes for about 40 cents, right? Per 1 million tokens. So this does begin to add up over time, and you can see even the GPT-4 models and some of their pricing structures here as well. So depending on your needs, you may not need to use the most advanced model, and you can stick to a cheaper and more affordable model if the computation that you need is very simple, right? So that's what the model choice is. Your reasoning effort, again, minimal for very simple tasks, very straightforward things. But high is going to use a lot of computation power, potentially a lot of memory, and a lot of API tokens and cost. So again, if you're building this for a client or you're building it for yourself, these are important settings to keep in mind so you do not go ahead and use more than you need to use. Tools. So this is the cool part because with an MCP server, you can connect to different tools like Gmail, Outlook, and the agent can actually interact with these platforms and these backends. So essentially, the MCP server is the agent builder's way of connecting with other websites and platforms to do what it needs to do. On N8N, it would use HTTP commands in order to do this, but with Agent Builder, it uses MCP servers. You can also have it do file search, in which case you can actually upload PDF and Word documents to give it a knowledge base for it to pull information from. So, for example, select vector store. I already have a vector in here that I made earlier, and my vector store has karate in it, right? So if I wanted to just make a brand new vector store, I would create and I would title this, let's say, dog walking rules, right? And then if I had PDF documents that, let's say, or books or Word documents, or even I just wanted to write up some text documents with certain rules and information, I would add files and then I would upload these files, um, you know, whether it's 10 books or 10 documents or 10 user manuals, and I would upload them all in here to be stored into this vector. Now, my vector contains multiple files, multiple PDF documents. This one I just added majestic standards for engineering companies, right? This is just a random reference. And then what you would do is you would copy this ID, the ID of this vector store, and then you would go back into your agent builder, paste the ID here, and then it would find Karate 101, and you would select this vector store for the AI agent to pull information from. So like that, you can create your own coach. You can create your own expert at whatever it is you're looking for. Cool. Next, web search, right? So you can have your AI agent actually search the internet. You can choose which websites you want it to search through, which domains, and choose a location as well. Generally, you don't have to add anything here. You can leave it default for the most part, but if you want to guide it better, then you can add certain domains and websites for it to search from if you already know more or less what you want to use it for. The output format allows you to change the output. Right now we have text, and if you remember in our end document, if we add a property, it comes out as a string, and we can actually take the output, which is a text from here, and convert it into JSON, or we can add a widget, which they do have a widget builder, which I'm not going to get into right now, but you can create a front end with the ChatKit widget builder from this and have this actually change essentially front end visuals. And I will go over that in another video, but I just want to just finish showing off the agent node so we can wrap this up and move forward. But definitely subscribe if you have been enjoying this video, if you've been learning something, and definitely stay tuned because we're going to be going over all the tools individually with specifics, and then we'll be going over the logic nodes and the data nodes. I just like to do it in bite-sized formats because I know it's a lot of information, especially for beginners. So next, verbosity or verbosity is essentially how wordy do you want it to be, right? How much do you want it to return? And then display response in chat, show search sources, which it doesn't have to do. This just kind of shows like where it got its information from when it's responding to the user. So remember, all of these things are important because they can essentially, depending on what you allow or don't allow, it can continue looping and wasting tokens depending on who's using it or who breaks it. And the more that it returns, remember, it's adding an output, right? It's adding more output, so it's adding more cost. So the less output that it needs to process and actually return, the better. But obviously you would want responses to be in the chat so you or your user can see what it's thinking and returning to you. And then right to conversation history, just again, it references the chat history. So if you're not referencing the chat history here, you would also want to turn this off. But if you do, then you would want to keep this on and turn this on as well. So these kind of are synonymous in that way. So in any case, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. That does go over all the nodes in the core section here. Please stay tuned for the next video where we're going to go over the tools individually and go over examples of file search, what are guardrails and why they're important, as well as MCP servers and how the agent can connect to other websites and platforms and help you out moving forward. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.